Welcome back to another episode of the Tourism AI podcast. I'm here with Peter once again this week, and we are going to dive into the latest and greatest of AI updates in the tourism industry. So we are going to go over the potential job disruptions that obviously many people have been talking about in relation to AI advancements. We're going to use McDonald's as a case study. And we're also going to talk about Apple's latest announcement approach to integrating AI into products and what that means for the tourism industry. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about Peter's recent experience at TELUS Spark right here in Calgary. And that's kind of a fun case study, as it is a tourist attraction, pardon me, right here in Calgary, and kind of what they have going on in their event, AINS. So yeah, let's kick it off. So, Peter, why don't you tell us, we're going to start on that maybe scarier note. Tell us about some of those job disruptions in the AI or in as a result of AI.
Yeah, so this topic is coming up as a result of a Forbes article that I read last week, and it was 12 people will soon replace. So obviously a very eye-catching headline. And I think that, I'm going to maybe take a step back before talking about the article and just talk about AI adoption. And I think that there's a lot of hesitation with respect to AI adoption. And honestly, it's a lot of these doom and gloom type articles when it comes to all jobs will be replaced. We're not going to have anything to do. And honestly, I'm going to say that I don't think at this point anybody can predict what's going to happen in the future. So if somebody's telling you definitively all of these jobs are going to be replaced, they don't really know. But at the same time, if somebody's telling you none of these jobs and no jobs will be replaced, they also don't know. So, I mean, we're just in this sort of we don't know place. But there's no question in my mind that jobs will be disrupted and that we need to be vigilant. We need to be thinking about this conversation quite a lot. So just kind of walk through the Forbes article, and there are definitely some jobs in here that be disrupted sooner than others. So number one, it said technical support analysts, technical assistant for troubleshooting common issues, step-by-step guidance and solutions to users. I think 100% this is a job that's going to be disrupted. I use ChatGPT myself for this. I ask constantly ChatGPT or Gemini, how do I do this? What are the steps of doing that? What's the best way to approach this? It's a use case I use all the time. So I think this will be definitely a job that will be disrupted. I don't think it'll be replaced necessarily, although maybe over time it might be. The second job is content writer. And so, yeah, there's no question. And content writer and proofreader and translator. So sort of a set of jobs, I guess, all related. I think, again, we are seeing already that this is a sort of a disrupted area. We've seen a few studies. We've seen a couple different articles about this. So, there's no question. These are language models. They're very good at writing. They write well. And so, while I think there will still always be content writers and there will always be proofreaders, I think there's going to be less of them. I think there's no question about that. That's just a sort of obvious low-hanging fruit. The next one, which I thought was interesting, was social media manager. This one I'm less sure about, at least in the short term. I think maybe longer term, maybe, definitely AI will help in terms of making social media management less human intensive for sure. There's ways that ChatGPT can be used, but full replacement of this, I think there's a lot of areas where you still need that human sensitivity. You need that sort of intuition. You need a couple of things that I think a machine will never replace, quite frankly. But again, definitely going to be disrupted. So no question about that. Virtual assistant, that's an interesting one. Again, I don't know. I think there's definitely, again, going to be a disruption. Full replacement, I'm not sure. It's at this point where we are at today. These AI tools can do a lot of things, but they can't sort of do very, very complex things and many things that take a lot of complex multiple step tasks. So this one's I'm not that sort of sure about either. Market research analyst, definitely. Definitely market research. These tools are great at that. So, definitely I think a job that's at risk, but at the same time, there will still need to be a human element, understanding the data, making sure that the prompts are correct, or not the prompts, but the outputs are correct, things like that. Tutorial and education support, tutoring and education supporting. And again, I think there's areas where these tools can certainly help with tutoring, but there's also areas where people aren't going to be that comfortable using a tool to tutor, and they're going to want to have that human interaction. I think this is a very human, personal thing. Personal finance advisor, it's an interesting one. I'm not even going to talk about that one because I think different people have different feelings about that based on who they are. And again, I think there's no question, jobs are going to be disrupted. But at the same time, there's still going to be need to be humans doing certain things. And I think still there's going to be new jobs. So, anyways, I don't want to say that this article was clickbait, but it certainly was meant to capture a lot of attention and get a lot of headlines. But at the same time, in the tourism space, there are probably some jobs that are going to be, again, where the machine is going to be more in the loop or more playing a bigger role. Things like customer service representatives, things like travel agents, tour guides and things like that. In some cases, for sure, artificial intelligence is going to play a huge role in those areas. But I think that, as I argue all the time, creates more space for humans to have authentic human interactions. So, if you can get, we already have virtual tours or tours where you can go in and you can sort of put in earbuds and listen to something and listen to a recording. We're just going to have a more interactive sort of same thing. So it's not like this is all that new, although I think it'll be better. So yeah, I guess what I will say is the best way to make sure that you are not replaced by AI is to be as knowledgeable as you possibly can about AI, to be tuning up your soft skills, and to be paying attention to this space. So we don't know where the future is going when it comes to jobs. I predict, and I'm very bullish on this, that we will have new jobs. Just like when the internet came in, there were, yes, some jobs were replaced, but brand new jobs were created. And I think we're going to see something similar. But I can't predict the future, and nor can anybody else. So just, when people are predicting mass layoffs and mass job disruption and mass, whatever, get yourself informed and make your own decisions about your career and your future so that you aren't left behind if you're not paying enough attention.
Yeah, I would say, we've spoken about it before, but learn the tools, kind of get to know them, become the expert in the tool. That's going to give you, extra value there as well. But as soon as you know how all of these processes can be automated in your job, even though that sounds very scary, then you can add that next layer of value. And that's how you can kind of keep on trekking there. So exactly. Is the challenge. Peter, I'm wondering if you can tell us how you foresee potentially, and I mean, there's two sides to this coin, I think. One, where is the tourism industry seeing this, as a factor the most? And what new opportunities do you potentially see with the advancement of AI for the tourism industry on the human side? And again, that's a bit of a tricky question at this time, but hazard a guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, I think things like booking management, I think things like travel recommendations, I'm seeing some neat tools that do things like create itineraries for you using artificial intelligence. It asks a few questions, you provide responses, it gives you, itineraries, things like that. So, I think a lot of that stuff, AI is definitely going to sort of what I'd call the administrative side of tourism, there's no question. And I think actually that's a very positive thing because it takes a lot of work to do these things, to create itineraries, to help people through bookings, customer service, answering basic questions in a hotel. Like, we know there's shortages of labor in the tourism industry. So I think that this is actually a solution for the most part in tourism. Whereas on the other side, the ability again to provide authentic human interactions, to provide really great customer service, human to human, to go that extra mile for a traveler or a tourist. If I work in a hotel and somebody's asking me about, where do I go, where do I go for this or where do I go from that? Like humans are still going to go to humans and ask humans questions. As much as an AI is going to recommend things, I want to know from the concierge person at the front who lives in the city where his favorite restaurants are around here, because I'm going to just put more credibility into that person than I will into a tool, right? And so I still think that in tourism, that really anywhere where there's that authentic human interaction need is just going to be enhanced, I think, as a result of AI, because hopefully people will have more time to, and I think will be a really positive thing.
I agree. I think we've spoken before about how tourism is a very human industry inherently. And so to your point, Peter, in terms of, those administrative tasks being sort of the ones that get taken over by AI, maybe not a bad thing. I know neither you nor I are really into the administrative things, so that's not such a bad thing for either of us. But I wanted to ask you, do you think, we've been talking a lot about trust on the podcast and how people are feeling about, different actors, but also AI in and of itself. Do you think people are more likely, less likely, sort of the same likeliness to go to a tourism attraction where, a lot of it is being done by AI versus a human? Should people be balancing that? Should they be really cognizant of that?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend again on the person and on the people. I think that adding a bunch of AI, and we're going to talk about the fact that I was at this, TELUS Spark event, which is all about AI. Group in a certain number of people that are interested in that and are wanting to know about that. Like I mentioned, I think in a podcast or two ago, the humanoid robot, and like that could be a really neat PR opportunity experience for people that they'd want to go and talk to this humanoid robot, right? And so, those are the kinds of things I think they're kind of novel right now. And I think they have the potential to create buzz and excitement. But at the same time, as we mentioned before, it needs to be done properly. It needs to be communicated properly. It needs to be marketed properly, right? And I think at this point, what I'm seeing, what's working is, a lot of companies are doing this from an education standpoint. And, like, let's expose you to this AI. Let's answer your questions. Let's help you understand it. Show you that it's not that scary, all that kind of stuff, show you what it can do. So I think if you approach it from that type of perspective, I think it has a lot of potential. And to do that, you need to make sure you're transparent, you're upfront, you're have people who are knowledgeable alongside the AI to answer people's questions, right? And we'll talk about more about that when we talk about the TELUS Spark event. But anyways, there needs to be knowledge at the human level related to technology to make people feel comfortable with the technology. So there's sort of a trend I'm seeing around AI plus human is where really the best things happen and the best outcomes happen. And I think in the tourism industry, AI plus human plus transparency are really the magic unlocks of incorporating AI into your operations as a tourism business.
Nice. Before we move on, was there anything else you wanted to note from the Forbes article?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say again that we don't know what's going to happen. And just taking sort of doom and gloom articles as this is what's going to happen and then burying your head out of the sand is the wrong approach. So, get educated, stay in the conversation, learn as much as you can, use the tools. That is the best way to future proof yourself in the age of AI. And then in addition to that, also make sure you're honing in on your soft skills, on your people skills, problem solving skills, discernment, all of these things. Those are the skills of the future. So, those are the two things I think. Stay active in the AI conversation and keep tuning up those human skills.
Nice, great takeaways. Okay, I want to pivot over to McDonald's because they have a new we can't talk. New AI voice order technology that they're implementing in their drive-throughs. Now, there's a pretty clear correlation there on job loss. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on there, Peter?
Yeah, and maybe I'll just correct you actually and say that this is not new technology. They've been kind of testing this over the last little while, and in fact, what they've done is they've decided to pull this technology out of their operations. So they partnered with, I believe it was IBM, to develop a sort of an AI powered ordering technology. And what happened is I think that the technology was working well most of the time, but the times it didn't do well, people basically posted it on social media and got a lot of negative media attention. So this is an interesting contrast to all of the job loss in the sense that McDonald's was trying to test some technology to streamline operations, reduce the workload on human employees, be more consistent and efficient. And I think they learned, unfortunately, sort of a bit of a hard way that people weren't ready for it. And so they decided to sort of take a step back. And certainly McDonald's is pretty clear in this article that we're referencing that they're not out of the game, but they're just taking a cautious approach. And I think that there's a lot of lessons learned from the way that McDonald's is approaching this. Is take a cautious approach, don't go all in. I think they did something like 100 McDonald's locations. I don't know if around the world. I don't know the details, but they just tried it for a while, got some negative backlash, pulled it back, probably back to the drawing board, right? And so, to be determined what McDonald's AI sort of, I guess, approach going forward is going to be. But I think they're going about this in a very responsible and careful way, and not to sort of disrupt things too much.
Right. Sounds like it was a nice enough anyway, as far as they go PR cleanup there, not having to put in too much heavy lifting and sort of smoothing things over. Although when you're a global conglomerate, it's hard to kind of go wrong too poorly when you're somebody like McDonald's. Peter, do we know anything about the tech that they were using? Was it sort of were they basing it off of a large language model? Were they borrowing from One of the ones that we've already got out there, like ChatGPT, and I know a lot of folks are using ChatGPT as their model when they're building new tech, but making it sort of their own. What do you know about that?
So I don't have the article right in front of me, but from recollection, I believe that what they did is they partnered with IBM and they created a bit of a custom tool or solution and in partnership with IBM. That was my recollection of the article. Apologies, I don't have it in front of me. And then really it was, rolled out as a pilot project on a pilot project basis. So I don't know the underlying technology too much. Although from what I recall of the article, there was also some, I think, thoughts about sort of rolling this out at McDonald's, but also rolling it out as a technology that other restaurants could use. So, again, I think that the story is not over for McDonald's here. I think they see this as, now maybe we're in the technology space as well, which is interesting, right? So, I think that if that is the case, it's an interesting case study for, companies to think about what they are in their future, right? I mean, if a company like McDonald's can, create a solution for the entire, maybe not entire, but for a large chunk of the restaurant industry here, and resell that solution or provide that solution as an option for restaurants, that's now all of a sudden they have a different revenue stream. So, yeah, I don't know the exact details, but that's what my recollection was of it.
Nice. Obviously, you've made a couple of really good points there in terms of folks taking, tech and kind of building that into their service offering. Before they were just selling burgers and fries, and now they might be selling new tech to several other restaurants and potentially other industries as well. Would you recommend, and if you would, which I have a feeling you will, folks in the tourism space do something similar? And if so, any, lessons that we can take from this sort of case study for tourism operators and DMOs?
Yeah, so this is kind of, I guess I'll answer that question in reference to another article. It's actually an article I'm writing right now. That's Professor Ethan Mullick, who's an academic in the United States out of the Wharton School of Business, just actually released an article, and I think it's trying to remember the title here. It was something like HR is R&D or something along those lines. Essentially, what he's saying is that we're all in the R&D space now. Every human is in the R&D space. And so the reason I'm referencing that article is because if you think about where we're at, AI technology is not like a traditional piece of technology that like an IT company would or an IT department would implement, in that AI is different from traditional software, and that traditional software responds in a very predictable manner. We know exactly what it's going to do every time, whereas AI doesn't do that. And so you can't really, it's more like a human than it is like a piece of software, even though it's not a human. And so what Professor Malik is arguing in his argument is that essentially a lot of the unlocks of how to use AI are going to be unlocked at the sort of staff individual level. And I think that the key for organizations to sort of leverage all of those unlocks is, number one, allow employees to sort of test and be R&D and play around with AI within some limited capacity, but then also have a method to capture and optimize and do best and create some best practices around those uses, right? And so, yeah, I think that, while I think many people in the tourism industry aren't going to go about AI adoption with the thought about becoming an AI tech solution provider, I think that is a real outcome that some tourism companies are going to end up seeing, because they're going to come up with something really awesome because they have a really great system and process, and then they're going to see that that's something that could be used for others, right? And so, when I look at this space for the tourism industry, I sort of see multiple layers of AI solutions, and the ones that excite me the most are the industry-wide AI solutions, right? Because I think there's a lot of similarity amongst a lot of different people in the tourism industry and what they do. And if we can find some AI solutions that sort of unlock productivity or create efficiency or increase accuracy or do whatever they do industry wide, there's really great opportunities then to sort of resell, repackage, or whatever that looks like to the entire industry, right? So that's what gets me excited, and I think that we are going to see some smaller and medium-sized tourism related companies are going to create amazing solutions that are going to find that those solutions can be applied for others, and they may open new markets as a result.
100%. What I'm hearing is that we all have opportunities to be innovators in our own respective industries, but also, cross-disciplinarily. So test out the tools. You could be the next AI person who's making waves. You never know. All right. On that note of big tech, Let's talk about our next story, which is on Apple. They've just defined their roadmap for AI using their For the Rest of Us approach. I know they just made some big announcements. It's very Gen Z of me, but I've heard all about the new Genmojis, where you can customize your own emojis, and that's obviously kind of fun and cool. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about the For the Rest of Us approach by Apple, Peter?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll say that Apple has been not widely criticized, but widely pointed to as being behind when it comes to AI adoption. And, they're not sort of at the forefront of the large language model game, and they're not, competing directly against ChatGPT. In fact, what they announced was that they're going to be partnering with ChatGPT, in terms of how AI is going to be used in their devices. So, but I think Apple's approach is a really interesting one in that Apple recognizes that, the fastest way to AI adoption is actually in the devices that we already use, right? So, if I use I'm not an Apple guy, but if I use my Apple iPhone or whatever, and I have now some AI features in my iPhone that making my pictures cooler or turning a picture into a video or whatever it is, that's probably the fastest way we're going to get to AI adoption, wide scale. And I think Apple's really smart to identify that. And the other thing I'll say is that I think Apple recognizes that it's very expensive to build large language models and to be at the forefront of the large language model sort of race. And Apple decided that instead of trying to spend all that money to be at the forefront of that race, they can partner with companies that are at the forefront of that race, and then they can use those partnerships to basically make their core products as cool as possible. And at the end of the day, that's what Apple does. They make really cool products, right? People love to use. And so, yeah, I'd say that they were very smart in the marketing of AI for the rest of us, and by the way, AI in their world is Apple Intelligence. So, they're great at branding, obviously. One thing I will say is that generally speaking, the artificial intelligence space, branding of products has been horrendous, right? You got this tool and that tool and version this. It's very kind of software designer kind of branding, word language. Apple, is doing the Apple thing, and AI, Apple Intelligence, AI for the rest of us, just great branding, right? And again, you all of a sudden have great tools, or you hear about your friend that has amazing AI tools in their new iPad or in their new iPhone, and now you want that iPhone and that iPad. So, part of this is a response, I think, for Apple as well, in terms of, what can we put into these phones to sell more phones? And they, or their iPads or computers or whatever it is, right? So, Apple just understands what their core business is. And I think that's really critical. And, I don't think they're down and out or behind at all in the AI game. I just think they're taking a very different and a very smart approach.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very palatable for most people, even if you're feeling hesitant. I mean, I've already kind of mentioned the Genmojis thing, but that's a very easily swallowed AI tool that people can sort of wrap their heads around without, feeling like it's going to take over and ruin my life. And it won't, just to be clear. But obviously, as the tech develops and we see a little bit more from Apple, who knows what it's going to look like, but I'm sure they'll be building off of what they already have. I think to your point on, some of these other competitors who, well, sort of competitors, we're all kind of competitors now that we're in the AI space, but you know what I mean, who aren't marketing as well. You could point to the Meta glasses. They've been chatted about for probably close to 5 or 6 years now. I want to say that might be a false stat, so don't quote me on it. But I know they've been in the ether for a while. I was actually just shopping for new glasses a while ago, and Ray-Ban actually offers the Meta glasses. And I remember looking at the ad and thinking, nope, that's not for me. Maybe one day, but not right now. So to your point, Peter, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in terms of branding and positioning in terms of AI use. And I think that's an important thing to note for the tourism industry as well, as we've been kind of talking about, trust and getting folks to use these tools. So just keep in mind that that's an important piece.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Emily, too, that Apple went out of their way to talk about all of the security measures and all the way they're going to keep your data stored and secured. And, Apple is by far the most trusted company in the world when it comes to secure access to data and data security and all those things. And, again, that's the hardest piece of this AI thing is, who owns your data? Where does your data go? We're putting a lot of personal information into these tools. And so, Apple's really going out of its way to make sure that at least consumers feel like they're doing all the things that need to be done. Now, we can argue there's been some debate online about, the fact that they've partnered with ChatGPT in certain cases, and where does that data go when you ask it to do something. I'm not going to get into that debate. There's a big debate happening. But the point I'm making is that Apple really focused on, I think, what they hear from people. And, I certainly hear concerns about security and data all the time when I talk to people about AI. And I'm sure every single company hears that. Every company in the AI space is talking about the fact that they're keeping your data secure. Apple is the most trusted company and they have the most to lose if they get it wrong. So, that was, I think, a big part of their announcement and their rollout of AI.
What would you recommend in the tourism space to keep in mind in terms of data and security?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's number one, first of all, as I will probably be a broken record, is, as an organization, you need to have responsible AI use policies and principles. And within those policies and principles, you need to talk about data security, safety, what kind of information we can put in. I always talk about when I teach AI courses about, low risk, high reward test cases, right? So, we need companies, first of all, in tourism and in every industry, just need to have conversations about this and need to formalize what's okay and what's not okay. What are the guardrails in terms of how you're allowed to use AI? Because we need to allow people to the point earlier, experiment with AI, but we need to give them sort of the rules of the game or give them the parameters through which they can sort of inside which they can experiment, right? Beyond that, I mean, we always trust the companies that we work with already. So, I always tell companies, look at the tech stack that you're working with already. If you already trust Google with your data, which, we're a Google company, they have all of our data. And so then it probably makes sense for us to be using Google AI tools because we already have all our data with them, right? Microsoft is similar, right? Now, ChatGPT things get a little bit more interesting because it definitely is another outside company, but we need to just understand also the privacy and security protocols of each company. What, you're signing on to a new tool, you better read those terms and conditions when it comes to how they're using your data. You need to make sure you're adjusting the permissions correctly. So I think that a lot of the things when it comes to security for AI are the same when it comes to basic security for using a computer. I think a lot of the principles are the same.
Right. Hopefully we can use AI to take some of that jargony, long, all of that, text, the wall of text that you see in a terms and conditions sheet and maybe shrink that down, but it still says everything you need to know.
That's actually a great point, Emily. What I will say as just a piece of advice to people is that, if you get this large, here's our terms and conditions for using our tool and it's written in legal mumbo jumbo and it's, impossible to understand. That's actually a great use case for
There you
ChatGPT.
go.
Put it into ChatGPT and say, can you please rewrite this in, grade 9 English as plain language as possible? Help me understand what it means. Great use case for ChatGPT. So there you go.
Nice. Love it. Okay, there's your AI tip for the day, everybody. Okay, I want to pivot over to our last story. This one's probably the most directly applicable to AI and tourism since it happened right here in Calgary at one of our pretty good tourist attractions, I would say, TELUS Spark, the Science Center. It's pretty fun. It's very engaging. Take your kids there, but if you're an adult too, go check it out. But Peter, why don't you tell us about the AI and Us event?
Yeah, so this was a date night. My wife Christina took me on a date. She saw AI and thought I'd be interested, and actually I was, so she was right. So TELUS Spark, which is our technology science center in Calgary, has been hosting, I think for the last month or 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever it is, sort of exhibits about artificial intelligence. And they had a one night event, which was an AI after hours adults only AI and Us event is what they called it. And so really what this was an opportunity for, people to go out and experience AI firsthand. And obviously it was adults only. So there was drinks, there was a DJ, it was sort of had a nightclub feel to it. Which was kind of fun. And, for me, some of the takeaways of the TELUS Spark event was just, I didn't learn a lot about artificial intelligence. And the reason for that is because the event made me realize how much further ahead I am than many people when it comes to just knowledge about and use of tools in the artificial intelligence space. So, it was a very literally, here's a tool that can create an image using artificial intelligence. Here's you know, I did get to use character AI, which is an AI tool I've never used before. So now it sort of acts the same as many other AI tools. But it was interesting for me to see just how people were reacting to the artificial intelligence they were using. So, AI would be doing its thing, and there was literally people in complete awe about what they were seeing, right? And I think if you're deep into the AI space, you sort of forget sometimes just how amazing this technology is. We sort of get pretty complacent pretty fast. And this event for me was just people watching and and letting me see how people react to AI technology for the first time or a certain type of technology for the first time. And people were in awe, they were amazed. So that was really cool. It was also interesting for me in terms of, I asked some interesting questions and I'll sort of pick on TELUS Spark a little bit, but we were at a workshop and I asked the people that worked for TELUS Spark if TELUS Spark had a responsible AI use policies and principles. And honestly, the person didn't exactly know how to answer the question. The answer was no, they didn't. And I kind of stumped her mostly because I don't even know if she exactly knew what I was talking about. So for me, that was like, yeah, there's still a lot of need for education and training in this space. There's still a lot of need for formal corporate discussions, right? There's still a lot of need for every single here's an organization that's doing an exhibit and showcasing AI, but doesn't even have AI policies and principles in place.
Well,
So
and
that was very
they
challenging.
have them, right? Even if they do, somebody who's running a workshop is going to be very different than somebody who's working with the board of directors of TELUS Spark. But there's still an important lesson there, because let's say that they do actually have their AI use policy. Good, you've gotten the first part, make sure everyone knows it. It's not helpful for you to have these documents if your entire team, whether you're 5 or 500, everybody has to have their eyes on that document to make sure that nobody's slipping up, especially when it relates to that data and security issue. It only takes one person, even when people aren't using AI and they mess up with a security breach, those people go to jail. So just remember that now that we're in the age of AI where these tools are, significantly more powerful than John sending the wrong email. Keep that in mind. Peter, I'm wondering if you think that there would be value, kind of bringing it back a little more positively, if there would be value in, whether it was TELUS Spark or other tourist attractions, doing workshops like these that involve AI, but don't actually center around AI. So let's take Drumheller. You've got the Tyrrell Museum. They're doing something about dinosaurs. Is there a use case for still bringing all of these tools in and doing some of the stuff that you and the other attendees were doing, but with AI?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value. I think that every kind of tourist attraction like this should really think about how to incorporate some aspect of artificial intelligence into what they do. And, probably some educational aspect around that artificial intelligence, but doesn't necessarily have to be, right? So I think this is a great way to test the market a little bit, right? Great, you put out one thing, maybe it's an educational programming and you just allow people to try it and then you have conversations with them and get some feedback. I think that's a very safe way to deploy AI in the tourism space. And you're gonna quickly see how people respond and what happens. What I will say about this event, a couple things is number one, it was very well attended. There was a lot of people. The age on average was about, I'd say 20 to 40 years old, but there was also older people. Not to say that, over 40 is older, but there were people over 40. And it was a very diverse crowd. There were, you couldn't point to, oh, there was just this type of demographic or that type of demographic. I saw some people who I know there who are, I would say, quite wealthy and well-to-do. And I saw some people that, looked like, they were just regular people that various walks of life or whatever. So it's a very diverse crowd, very well attended. It was a very positive buzz in the room. So from a tourism perspective, I think that it's a topic people want to know more about. And so it's actually a great place for the tourism industry to provide education to help people learn more about AI in a very safe way.
Yeah, you're getting my wheels turning. I'm thinking there'd be a great opportunity to almost do a corporate workshop, if you're wanting your team to get involved, learn more, get interested, get excited, take them to something like this. That would be a great day out, I think, as a
Yeah.
team building exercise. So
And maybe I'll throw it out there, Emily, is that I'd love to work with somebody in the tourism space that wants to create a educational AI opportunity in their museum, in their science center, in their, whatever. I think that'd be a fun project to work on. I think it would fit really well for the Tourism AI Network. So, hit me up. I'd love to do it.
love it. Nice. That's awesome. What can other tourism professionals learn about this event, the approach that TELUS Spark kind of took? Obviously, we've talked about making sure you have those responsible use policies. Make sure you've got that. That's step number one, no matter who you are. But what other lessons can tourism professionals, but also all of us learn from an event like this?
Yeah. I think the lesson learned that I got from this is that there's interest. And people are paying attention, they're interested, but we're still very early. So again, being that education provider, giving people the opportunity to approach AI in a safe way like this is a very powerful thing. People are afraid to try new things, new tools, and this TELUS Spark event kind of gave them the place to try new things. There was stations that were set up where and they had little iPads where you can create images, and then they'd print them for you. They had, they had little places to try AI in various different ways, and I thought it was really effectively done. So, my message to tourism is AI is something that's obviously generating a lot of interest and having a lot of people are having a lot of conversations about. And so why not leverage that interest to try to attract more people into your tourism destination by actually embracing AI and showcasing it from an educational standpoint?
Cool. I love that. I always like to end on a positive note. So let's leave it there. As Peter noted, if you want to work with him on any interactive AI workshops, opportunities, things like that, please do get in touch. You can send him a note. He's available all over the place on LinkedIn, Instagram. He's Tourism AI Guy. He's also on Twitter. Check us out at tourismainetwork.com and make sure you subscribe to the podcast.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Tourism AI podcast. To learn more about the network or get involved, visit our website at tourismainetwork.com or find us on socials at Tourism AI Network. We'll see you there.